Okay, calling to order the Richmond Parking Advisory Committee meeting of April 7th. And our recording.
Do you have a, Chuck, do you have an extra agenda for John?
Maybe that's great. I'm sorry.
Thank
This is
you.
minutes. I can stumble on them. So it's more important.
So I am started our welcome and open to public comments, and seeing none. I think we're going to move on to additions or deletions to agenda. I know that there's been some changes to the agenda that need to be announced here.
There has been.
What when their proposal?
No, I think that added, we just rearranged.
Okay, fantastic.
And that's the posted agenda.
Okay, so the posted agenda is correct. Now we have 6:10 topics for next meeting, which is, are we in position to, I think.
This is,
Contingent on this.
let's discuss that, because the suggestion was that if you were not able to take part in a conversation, that we schedule at the end of the meeting so that you could vote. That's great, except for we've got to move up the approval of minutes and topics for next meeting. And in my mind, topics for next meeting can be an email. But that's not
Unless there's anything in
that's not,
addition.
don't need to warn.
And as long as it's posted in time, then, right?
So I will leave that out from now on. Maybe make a note in the agenda that says topics to be submitted by email by next blah, blah, blah. But I don't think we necessarily need to have that be a standard, be a time marker.
Okay. So we are ahead of schedule, which is good. This is,
do we need one?
No, not for me. I'm just checking with you.
I wasn't feeling,
You're
I wasn't feeling the move. The burn. Okay, so we're on to
the discussion of Town of Richmond Code of Ethics and Conflicts of Interest Policy, which will be an interesting conversation. And how do we start?
Can I ask, it wasn't required by today, but have people gotten to that yet?
Yeah, I did it.
I did, okay, we've all done it.
I did it
Good.
when I left here.
Enjoyed it more than I thought.
Should we begin with John? Yeah, where do we begin?
How about we have John paraphrase his email conversations with Josh and the state?
So I just tried to clarify how the town and state policies go together. And I didn't get much useful feedback from Josh on that point, and I could have tried to clarify it more, but I didn't. My understanding is that the town expands on it and applies it to our committee, which the state rule in itself does not do. And so whether I think, so then Josh went to the ethics commission and sent the email with which he got a reply. And my assumption, and we can all weigh on this, that's an advisory opinion. It's not, you folks have to do this. It's an advice. And that he may have been a little vague and didn't get across this distinction about, in our example, a 3 mile Cochrane Road, and whether if you live anywhere on it, you potentially have a conflict of interest with any location along that road, which perhaps is something that a nuance that would be useful to figure out. And maybe we all have to make our own judgment on that. But to finish, she suggested or recommended.
Can I back up?
Okay, go ahead.
Just to ask a question. So when you were talking about the advisory opinion, is that something that Josh was saying or something that you in your opinion, it's really an advisory opinion.
Well, that's my opinion.
Okay.
It's advisory opinion based on the training.
And not to be confused with parking advisory.
Right.
It's not, it's
Yeah,
the, yeah, if we wanted to continue.
Oh.
I just wanted, terminology is.
Did you all get the email?
Yeah.
I don't have to, I don't have to read it now.
And for what it's worth, that this going to ask them was, was actually something that they laid out in the description, so this is the system working.
And for, my understanding is that their policy wouldn't apply to us, but they're answering is if it does, because we live in the town of Richmond. And
What
so,
do you mean by their policy?
the state policy
Okay.
doesn't
Okay.
specifically is extended by the town of Richmond, not by the state policy.
I felt like her reply to Josh. That she kept thinking we were the select board.
Yes.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
She clearly was saying, go sit with the public, and all this stuff, and it's like. Because Josh has added us onto that umbrella of the state, which when we all learned in our class is perfectly acceptable. She assumed that he was talking about select board.
Or the authority of a select board, like maybe
The real board,
the DM, the DRB or
water and sewer.
where people come in with their parcels to talk about, and some people have to,
I agree.
I had the sense that it was greater than,
Well, and I think that that's allowed, as long as it doesn't go, it has to have the minimum protections of the state thing, and then it can go beyond that, as I understand it.
So in a sense, she's interpreting the town policy, but maybe she's capable of doing that. This distinction as to where along the road, how far it goes along the road, wasn't a nuance that she got into. And then the answer is that you would say you have a conflict of interest, and it sounds like you would sit in a different location in this room, and that you would be called on as if you were a member of the public by the remaining members of the community.
Yeah, you would identify yourself as
Yeah.
Interesting.
John Cone from Cochrane Road, as opposed to.
There were a couple of, well, I guess we can talk about that.
yeah,
But-
we haven't gotten it. yet.
Yes, okay, so we have some questions.
So. Are you good?
Yes.
Alright, so I had some observations about this, if we adopted her suggested policies. My first thought was it was a matter of time before we don't have enough people to have a quorum. Because we'd automatically lose two, and then if there's any reason we would lose a third, we couldn't have a quorum. Meeting quorum. Wouldn't necessarily mean we could discuss all parking issues. So we have a quorum of three, we get together, and the first thing that comes up is Dugway Road. I'll talk about it, and Matt's not going to talk about it, and we don't have a quorum. If the town adopts her policy as spoken, as she laid out, I'm not sure how some of the town committees can even exist. In other words, committees that are so focused on what they do, Trails Committee or whatever. Any ruling they make will affect them more than the average resident of Richmond, which we all learned in our training was the litmus test for whether you can take part in these decisions. So I think that becomes odd. I think if we're looking for new committee member applicants, we're gonna have to screen them according to where they live and how they spend their recreational time. Because it's,
The lack of, first thing you said, I agree. You say the recreational time, I think they actually had an example that if you use the trail or deliver a coffee house or something that they were going to repair, unless it was going to fundamentally change their life, even if you preferred it more, that you might not have to reduce yourself.
It's true, however, let's take example, the Trails Committee, there are some that are on, the Wheel of Life or whatever, those other biking groups.
spoken with.
Yes.
Spoken well, thank you, those other biking groups, that's their whole thing, they come together for these events and,
Then they would be, yeah.
yeah.
I jokingly said to Matt, it's a good thing I don't park my car in Checker House when I go for a bike ride. Because somebody would say that's not right. What did I say? I'm gonna have to screen if I went in with it, maybe not by the recreational time, but certainly we couldn't have Duncan join the pack. Take my place, because I would make, I wouldn't even up there. And I guess I was looking for more pushback, looking for more out of Josh than we got. I felt like he didn't have our backs and was disappointed by that. Well, that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
I didn't think the question we were asking was that difficult. I thought that would have been, yeah.
So you're gonna give.
Do you want,
I
yeah,
think we talked about our.
yeah, so we,
So I think you speak.
a couple of questions that John and I had when we were going through the municipal ethics training, the video, I printed out the verbiage if anybody wanted it. The question, came up on slide 7. Who is subject to the new code? And so who's subject to the new municipal code? The code is applicable to most municipal officials and employees who exercise substantive decision-making authority. Generally speaking, if you have authority to affect the town finances, property, planning, or substantive town business, you are likely subject to the code. And we were sort of thinking that it's kind of like a gray area, because we obviously gather, our charge is to gather data for all those, all the people involved. And the work we do is we do decipher it down, and we give what we think are some options of how we should go forward. This advisory role that we have is we just collate and give and present to the select board. I feel that I personally don't have that authority, so I'm really, this is the part that I'm going, wait.
I answer what I give you what I think the answer is. We're not subject to the state code. We're subject to the town code, which expands it to public body, means any board, council, commission, or committee of the town of Richmond.
So what that was my read too.
Yeah,
What I was thinking about, like what you said, Chuck, is that it's gonna be hard for any advisory council, like recreation or trails, as opposed to something like zoning that has a line of say, to get quorum. And this may be something, I don't know what the right answer is, but one thought would be to go back and get the select board to reconsider how that is. And an alternative would be whatever recommendations are presented along with, it's clear that there was two different opinions and why. So just like the public can show up. I mean, I think what our job is to try to distill, from the public, et cetera, and add to a conversation that the public is free to join on. So a thought I agree that they have stated it, just like you said, John. They may want to reconsider, not just for our group, but to have a guideline that says anything that's in an advisory role, that there's transparency of who was in that body. But I think they need to think about it.
I think they've opened the door too far open to the appearance of impropriety. In other words, someone who didn't like the fact that Matt and I were dictating what happens on Dugway Road could come back and say, no, the new Essex thing says right there, and the town says right there, if it affects you more than your typical Richmond resident, you shouldn't have voted on it. I just think that door needs to be closed or worthless as a committee.
As I think are some other, I don't know which advisory committees there are, but
Things like the library committee,
there you go.
yeah.
Their number one interest in the library, good for them. And everything they do is gonna benefit potentially them more than anybody else. Good for them, you know, I mean, it's the library committee, but
It's kind of interesting, and I like that approach of just sort of like, you know, how are all these committees going to be affected and, you know, doesn't matter. Yeah, that's a really good example, Chuck. So it sounds like that. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I feel like the recusal, John, that we talked about, I think that's covered. So if for any reason you decide any member of any board has to leave, they also have First Amendment rights of speaking up during the open public time, whether it be in the committee that they're on or in the select board.
Yeah, well, actually, it sounds to me like it's even better than I thought, but the language was a little bit vague that said if you recused yourself in this, it wasn't clear that it said you couldn't appear as public.
Right.
But, you know, to the select board meeting that was on the same topic. But I think what you just, are we all in agreement that if we recuse ourselves because we go on the road, we can join this meeting as a member of the public as long as we identify?
I think she made that very clear.
That's what she
I think
said.
she clearly identified it.
I don't.
So
think-
the
I
thing
think
that
we're
was
good.
confusing
Yeah.
on slide 20, it ends with, you completely step away. So you completely step away from the.
Voting inside.
However, we still have,
Right,
we still are,
and
Public.
it becomes part of the public record, yeah.
I think she had pushback on that. I think that was something that in training came out and people said, hang on, you know,
Yeah.
you're still a voter.
and John, the one, I think you should talk about this one, because I think slide number 3 was that word, the amorphous, this one.
Oh, and this
You
goes
had-
to the point about, getting clarity. That there was, oh wait, which one? Do you have this
23.
one?
You see that? Yeah. That was the one that you had. You want to read it first and see
Which one?
the one that's underlined right here?
Oh, okay, great. Good cause can include situation where let's see, yeah. Conflict is de minimis in nature, meaning conflict is too minor to be considered legally significant. The conflict is speculative, intangible, or amorphous. If there is no one, okay. So the amorphous thing, I think it goes back to what we were all saying is, I could understand, so we all agree that if, Dugway Road is 3 miles long or Cochrane Road is 3 miles long, that the answer that she gave that if you live on the road is probably wrong. But so the amorphous thing, I think we would do ourselves and other committees a favor to say, you know, that you would have to clarify. And it might be, you know, if you can see it, but I don't know how that would work on Dugway, but or, you know, there's some reasonable number.
Is it line of sight? If it's twisty
Is it a
turny?
quarter
Is it
mile? Is it-
quarter mile? Yeah, I think,
I thought a lot about that, and I, of course, encountered this for 40 years in my profession with judges being asked to recuse. And, although it's not a perfect system, the focus is on the judge to decide if there's an issue. So I feel like we should be trusted to, on a case-by-case basis, decide if there's a problem. I actually would not want the select board to talk about sightlines or 1 mile down the road or half mile down the road or anything like that. I would rather it be left up to us to use our own sense of ethics and common sense and all of that.
Then I think that should be codified. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and because we're all gonna do the right thing.
So if it were something down at the other end of Dugway, we clearly are not impacted directly by that, we would all say, yeah.
Right, and
But I
then
think it
we
should
can,
be- Do you agree that it should be codified based on the, you know,
I think we need to, I think Josh or select board or somebody needs to clean this up. Because otherwise, we're gonna risk sitting here spinning our wheels until somebody says, no, you can't do that.
I think
You
the
told
same.
you you can't do that.
or the committee just disbands, you know.
I'm there.
So on that, The one thing that I was thinking about it today, and what are the ways to fix this? Because you had talked about how do we recruit? I think either we need to recruit a bunch of people so that who have no force in the game here. I don't think that force, so that reaching quorum is easier and that refusal doesn't make it kind of a, silly thing to even move. Or we could disband and say, majority of our work is done and this kind of issue could be sorted out by the select board directly. And I think we sort of owe it to them to sort of decide which of those things. But if we do neither of them, then I think we're kind of a lame duck.
No, I think you're right. I think there's three options and I think you're right. I think option one is we'd be, good luck with this, but we become a committee of 7 instead of 5. So we easier to get a quorum, easier for us to step aside and say, you don't need my vote, fine. Or of course, the downside of that is we can't even fill our own spots, so that's gonna go. Or we get clarification from the select board, Josh and everything about, we can't run to them, but every time we have a question. Go ahead, John, please.
So I'll offer my opinion of how I'm interpreting it now.
May I?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, you said 3 things, I just counted 2.
Third thing was disband.
Oh, okay, thank you.
No, it's not a fair question.
And yeah, I was just gonna say that that's not like in disgust. We've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm not saying, I'm not commenting at this point on the merits of going back to the select board of Josh, which might be good ideas, but just my interpretation of it as it is now, that say I open a rafting business and launching off of Cochrane Road, and I decide that's not a conflict of interest, and I'm not going to accuse myself. It's not your place to you. That's my decision to make, but then you all have the option, and anyone else, of filing a complaint. Is that, I think, what the training said?
Yeah.
Right, we can't vote you out
Right.
per se. We can let you know that we're gonna go to the select board because we think.
Right.
I think John's lucky drafts that are taking advantage of parking.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if we were to proceed, we could all make our own decisions. But certainly it's hard to do right now. I agree.
Well, what's interesting too about that is that, let's say the raft guy comes in, even if she or he is perfectly ethical and everything, they made a big point about appearances. If someone can assume that they are, then it's as good, it doesn't matter what's in their heart, right? It doesn't matter.
But I think you're always guarding against the appearances, and I think, say it again, I think this has opened the door up for somebody to come in here and question the appearance. Because
Absolutely. I'm in agreement. Underneath that, disbanding, and the challenges for getting new people on, many of us are ending our tenure here also, and it just also add that timeliness in. Just wanted to add on to your few things.
And another thought that I had, it's already really been discussed, but just to be clear, even if 3 would make a quorum in certain situations, there shouldn't be 3 people, I think, deciding what could be some fairly weighty issues. So that doesn't make sense to me either. So I feel very strongly about, I want to be left to my own sense of things, to be able to, clearly, if someone's parking 100 yards from my house, that, that sort of thing, but.
Wait, I did that. Can you flesh out that sentence? If somebody's sitting.
If the issue, for example, there's that long string of parking spaces that's just around the corner from my house, that would clearly be a conflict for me. I think it gets fuzzier the further up the road, past trucks, as things get fuzzier as to, another concern I have that if we go the recruitment route is, I'm assuming a lot of you came to this, I know I did, because I want to help solve a problem that I'm aware of. So if the sole reason I were here to solve a problem would be to solve a problem on East Hill Road, it would be, my true confession here, it would be of less interest to me.
Mhm.
So, I think that, and as others of you have said, it's just crazy to think of, if you live on the road, you shouldn't have to worry about recusing yourself for something 7 miles, 6 miles. Up.
Is there a fourth, of your three, the other would be to merge with recreation, trails or something, which presumably agree, I mean.
That's interesting.
And I don't, even on this issue where I may disagree with him, it still might be a good thing to think about because we've come to realize, like with the land trust, he's been a good partner, that anything which involves recreation has to consider parking. So, maybe broadening the scope and the mission of a bigger group to accomplish this.
In a larger quorum.
The largest forum.
Yeah, John, that makes sense in another way too, and one of the things I've been thinking about, and it's been hinted here the last few meetings, is that, there's not a whole lot going on right now in the parking committee
Mhm.
Yes.
to deal with. And so, there's the idea of maybe a sabbatical, kind of a partial disbandment, or a merger, something like that. And then maybe a ramp back up at some point in the future.
And the merger might be in the form of some of us or one of us joining that other group and sort of acting as gets the gang together.
But that's really interesting because there's recreation, there's
Right.
trails,
There's
and there's parking, and they all kind of,
the other parking, there's the town parking.
well, that's that falls under, yeah. a
So-
different-
So how do we, just thinking about the, well, I guess we're doing fine as far as time. I didn't realize, but, so next steps. Is it time to get back to Josh and say, here's what we've been thinking?
I think we have some specific clarifications that we should suggest. For example, on the gray area stuff. And however they form it, but then I think I do think we should meet with them.
I think I'm more aligned with at least the way Matt was describing it. I think you'd rather have some individual decision making rather than arbitrary decisions from the select board. So if we went back to either the ethics committee or the select board or to Josh, I would be for guidance, which was one of the possibilities, I think, that I would rather information on how one would make that decision rather than some arbitrary mileage or something.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that that's what we should suggest.
And I think if we look at our training, that's what we should do. We have a question, we need a clarification. We should go back to the ethics committee and say, maybe we didn't form our question correctly, but this is what we're taking, you said, and these are the repercussions that we see happening to our committee. And just to backpedal a little bit, Matt, you can hate me for this. I'm not a fan of merging because I think we're not all going to have the same priority. You can easily be outvoted on a parking issue by people in the trail who want to have more parking, even though we don't like it. I think our priorities are specific to what we do.
No problem, I got you right here, Chuck. Now,
Chuck interrupted everything and.
I think that is.
This dialogue is very important to me, may I just say, and I appreciate everyone's
So
temperature on this.
I took us off the rails. Let's put us back on the track.
What do we do
So
next?
are we, Are we gonna ask John to go back since he has a dialogue with Josh and this young lady?
I did ask Josh if he
Where do we
wanted,
invite Josh to a meeting?
I invited him tonight, but obviously he's next door, so I know that he would come to a meeting. Yeah,
I think if we could, if he has the time. Having him at a meeting would be great, because I think this is a conversation rather than,
I also think that since we're sort of, I think, I don't know, but I think we're probably the first group to sort of run into some of these questions, that having that conversation will pay off for him and the town down the road.
I wonder if we're not taking it more seriously than some of the other groups are, maybe we're taking it too seriously, I don't really know, but I appreciate what John Rankin did. I appreciate the response, I want to do everything up here. You know, I don't want to do anything down under the table, so I mean, I think we're on the right path to identify the problems and try to correct them.
do we need to articulate them in a document of some kind? You're great with your organization, Matt, you're grabbing a bunch of organization right there, we have these other thoughts. Do we need to say, this is our questions going forward? It sounds like there's more than.
well, being devil's advocate,
Mhm.
we're all pretty much on the same page, I'm sensing.
On,
The idea of trying to keep the decision closer between us, and then if necessary, and when appropriate in the future, asking for guidance if there's a particular problem. Do we really need to, well, before I came to the meeting, I've been thinking about this the last few days. Part of me was just thinking, the woman that writes the letter, that was advisory only. We don't have to do it. So can we just go about our business? And just taking care, now that we've taken the course, take care to be aware of this and act accordingly when the time comes that we need to act accordingly. I'm just don't know how much back and forth there needs to be between us and the select board, is what I'm trying to say in an inarticulate way.
I think it might, I agree with that, I think it might be useful to, the issue that brought us to this was an anticipated difference of opinion. And we ought to think through how would that play out in what you said. I agree that we could be trusted to make those decisions for ourselves, but you know that situation would cause, what would we do in that case? In the specific case that brought us to this point.
So it seems to me then maybe the big two choices are having maybe John continue a dialogue with Josh, or we invite Josh to a meeting.
And just the background, when I sent it, I think I forwarded the conversation or the email from the woman on the ethics committee and Josh, but I did not include with my original email to Josh, where I had a more nuanced question that would encompass living close or far away, and Josh simplified it to living on the same street.
Mhm. I see, Jim.
Okay. I apologize for not saying it, but I appreciate you doing the heavy lifting on this. I appreciate you kicking us all in the pants and make sure we did all the training and all that stuff and identifying that this was a bigger issue than I first identified it to be. So thank you.
I interrupted you. Was there a
So
question
next
on the table?
steps,
Next
Yeah.
steps.
or what?
I favor that getting Josh to come in and for that dialogue would have probably more benefit to him and the town
And also,
and us.
I sometimes feel like the whole story doesn't come out in email communication.
Yeah.
If we may find ourselves needing to meet with Josh at his convenience.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
important that we're all there. I don't believe such a meeting needs to be warned. But we should check on that before we do it.
It's a great.
Does it?
Oh, yeah, we've never met with Josh privately, that's what you're asking.
Or
Anybody, really.
Yeah.
Well, we're meeting as a group and we're conversing.
That
a
is,
phone call?
I imagine there would be. I don't know.
I'm gonna bet that it has to be one, but that's not a problem.
Yeah,
No, I'm gonna
Well,
bet.
and I don't have a problem with meeting at his convenience, I'm generally free, except for the last meeting, which was really unusual for me.
I see.
Okay,
So maybe is it proper to move that we reach out to him? We ask to meet with him at his convenience, we do whatever parliamentary thing needs to be done with that. And that we continue to handle such business that doesn't bring up those conflicts until we have that meeting? Was that too many?
I'm perfectly fine stepping back from Dugway Road conversations until we clarify things.
Same thing.
I guess. If. It greatly delayed things that may or may not happen. That I'm interested in, I'd be disappointed. Perhaps we're not talking about a lot of time here. I'm mostly interested in the location of some signs on Cochrane Road, which presumably changes could be made relatively quickly.
And your intent would be to get them done by the season, right?
Yeah,
So we would even indicate to Josh that that's.
Yeah, and that fits with what Chuck was saying, is we'll meet at his convenience.
No, a side note that was interesting was that I had sent an email to, oh wait. Yeah, good point, and. Yeah,
So was that,
The way I wrote it, your motion
yeah,
is that we request a meeting with Josh. And in the meantime, those that are affected will step back from any decisions regarding Dugway, or East Cochrane Road.
and I would add that, that as we discuss the contents of the meetings, that we can jointly choose that's, hey, if we don't have a quorum on that, we can put that off until after the meeting with Josh.
and it doesn't necessarily mean we're not gonna discuss those topics, it just means we're
I'm
not.
not gonna decide, yeah,
Yeah,
so I think that's
I mean,
fine. Yeah.
like
Yes,
the movement of signs, I think that's a great thing to bring up on any road. Whether it's the QR code for Dugway or the signs that you've been talking about on East Cochrane, I mean.
I guess I want to clarify with it.
And I'm confused about what was added
Yeah,
to
but we,
the motion.
so. Presumably there are three people here that could talk about the location of signs on Cochrane Road, but do we want to wait before we get clarification or input from Josh before we discuss that?
I suggest we do, because I think 3 is, even though it technically might make for a quorum, it's only 3 people making a wide ranging, potentially wide ranging decision. Could someone articulate again the third point about the motion, the first one, request a meeting with Josh, number 2, step back as appropriate from Dugway and East Cochrane Road, and 3 was,
I think that was, were there three?
yes. Because you used the word and.
Well, I was saying
As I'm
that,
recalling.
I think that the thing that I was saying is that because we jointly decided what the agenda is, we can choose to put items, off until after, if we feel that strongly that we don't have quorum. But it had to do with, we don't accidentally come across these topics. If we all agree that we don't have enough people to discuss it, we don't put them on the agenda. But if you want to talk about if there's something that we all agree, whatever it is, that we don't all have to be party to it, then no problem. I'm just saying that we have control over what comes before us. Like,
So postpone topic, if not appropriate for,
if we all feel that.
too few folks to discuss. Oh, is that nicer?
All right, the goal is to be able to move forward with the ethics policy eventually after we learn more.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
but it sounds like we're gonna tie our hands and not really do anything. Which,
We're trying to resolve that by talking to Josh as a first step. Yeah,
but in the meantime, we're, you know, if we're agreeing we're not gonna move forward with anything, and we're not gonna make any changes, then we're kind of spinning our wheels. Which I think is probably what I'm hearing everybody wants, that's what.
Well, I know that I want it, but. Anyway, is there a second?
Anyways, there's what?
I
A
second,
second to the motion, okay.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved.
You can't,
What?
you can't vote, you're the minute taker.
Oh.
You have to recuse this
More letters you have to do.
So we're on to
Next one, John.
approval of.
Approval of 3:24:25 minutes.
Copy of the rules,
It was very short.
pretty straightforward.
Straightforward. I have no issues with it. What's the first thing I'm supposed to say? Someone seconds it, or yes, I moved to approve the minutes for
Well, thank you.
this.
Nice thing.
Yeah, I'm feeling the pressure though of someone carrying minutes the same night as the meeting.
Yeah, Josh, somebody's gonna mend me like a sieve here, so. And it was.
Okay, who seconded it?
Oh, you want to, yeah.
Okay, who did? Well, well,
John.
no, I can't. I wasn't here, so I can't approve the minutes. Okay. Okay. I'll need to say, just in the minutes officially, that Matt did not vote.
All right.
Now, what do I do with these minutes? Brian, you have to remind me.
Oh, Matt, he's been doing them more frequently than I have. Where does Chuck send the draft?
Um,
To Duncan?
it goes to Duncan.
So.
It's listed as well, yes, you can tell. him it's
That
been
reminds me
approved.
though, is I haven't done it in a while, so I need to go back and make sure that I send it.
I'm gonna go backwards for a minute, and you can call me out of order.
Okay, that's fine.
So someone needs to talk to Josh. And then just my opinion is, if then there's more, the woman got back to him fairly quickly, but I'd be disappointed if this drags out a long time. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm not, I wasn't volunteering if anyone wants to talk to Josh.
No, I think I'd be happy to invite him to our next meeting, or if that doesn't work, ask him for what day
Okay.
works. Do we have meeting days coming up on here? Topics for next meeting?
Who's taking the action to reach out to him?
If we decide on our meeting times, I will reach out and invite him. If he doesn't, we can find another one. Are they meeting, is the select board meeting tonight, something? Not their usual time, is it, are we opposite them usually? I think that, yeah. Looking up the meeting times, I'm sorry, my phone is having issues.
4:21, 7 to 9 PM. And we're 4:28. Our next one, 4:28. 6 to 8 PM, Andrews Community Forest is at the same time.
So our next meeting, John, is when it's, what's the date on that?
April 28th,
Probably.
6 to 8 p.m. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, 2 weeks from now, or so, maybe Josh can come to this one.
Is it
Um,
3 weeks from now? Am I counting
3
right?
weeks from now, but I'll probably still be under the influence of drugs from my colonoscopy earlier that day.
And,
And no one wants a second one on the same day, but
So the 28th won't work for me.
but, if he's available sooner, would we be open to that?
I would, I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
I am.
Yeah, I don't know what the select board, there is a select board meeting tonight from 7 to 9. And there was a water and sewer meeting, which must have been the one we saw over there.
so, do the 5 of us wanna find another couple of dates that would work for us, that I can say, are you available here? Or do you want me to ask him, when is he available? And then have we do either.
Sure.
Pretty busy now, but,
I'm fine with you asking him, but that's, I
okay.
don't know what the others.
if possible, I'd like to avoid Wednesday evenings for the
Okay.
next few weeks, if possible.
Oh, yeah, Wednesdays are less good, evenings are less good. for
Okay.
me.
And Tuesdays are not great.
No Wednesdays, no Tuesdays,
Was someone asking about what was on the select board agenda tonight?
no. No, as the calendar, I was saying, why, that's not their normal time as during. All right, I will ask what works. And then I'll get back with all of you, or maybe we should do one of those, maybe you can help me do one of those doodle things that,
I can do a Wednesday either too.
okay, well, I'll put that down too. So I will reach out, ask him, tell him we need his guidance.
So we are right on time. I do have, is it okay if we move on? I have one procedural question. After we all watched the movie for ethics. Our reading was that the only people who had to sign it and send it back were the select. Do we need to all complete the form and send it back?
Yes, individually.
Okay.
Yeah.
They sent me a receipt that showed the quiz questions on it.
Yeah, there was quiz
And I sent-
questions I found today.
Yeah, I sent that off to Duncan as
Yeah.
well as the signed
So
council.
you did it
So
and
I did not do it. I was gonna show it to you tonight.
I did it.
Did you do the
So
client
I'll do
question or
yes.
something that Duncan?
I'll go back and do that. Okay, great.
We both need to do it. I didn't go any further.
Chuck, I think it's the Eagle Scout thing, you just do what you're told, do what you're told.
Okay. We are at 6:50, which is just where we should be, or just a little
Well,
bit shy.
I'm a little concerned, before we break up into anything else, of topics for next meeting. We didn't come up with our next meeting date as PAC. The 28th doesn't work. Pardon me.
Oh, wait, I'm so sorry,
Did the wrong
Um,
month.
yeah.
Yeah, got it.
It's
Okay.
May 28th. So,
That's what we did ours last. All
so April 28th does work for me.
right,
Oh,
is that all good for everybody?
As far as I know.
May 20th, as far as, okay. All right, May 28th. I mean, April, sorry. April 28th. I don't see if he's available now. Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at our calendars.
ready to proceed? Okay. Preparation for summer 2025 Checker House parking area.
So I had a conversation. Email, I guess, with the state. Regarding what we need to do with them. It does not look like at this point we need to have a one-on-one permit meeting with them, but they're ready to go, we gotta check with. I sent an email to Duncan and Pete, reminding them that we need to be open on May 15th. Duncan asked that I check the level of the grass on May 1st. I didn't want to get involved. For discussion. I asked about, I've asked this before, I asked about signage there, say seasonal parking, May 15th and November 15th, so people can know. had suggested I'd have to approved by the DRB. Well, I could make a request from, Pete,
That's
I
new
guess,
info.
somebody else in the problem, basically.
That's new info. Okay.
Is May 15th sort of a global date for opening, like, for example, for the signage, we'd want to have everything in place for, or is it vary by site?
I think, boy, John,
I don't have an opinion.
I think May 15th is the opening of trails.
That's a good,
But I think also the checkered bridge parking is, dependent on the leasing of it, right? Leasing it.
Right, in the terms
In the terms.
of our. It's May 15th to November 15th. And I think. Kevin originally came to those dates because that seemed to be about what the mountain biking season was for the trails off of Johnny Brook.
my only reason for asking is when we talk to Josh, you can sort of say that we want this stuff in place, but we'd like to have this decision so we know where we are, so we can prepare for that date. Is that helpful?
Well, I'm not,
At this point, I think that parking area is the town's responsibility.
No, I meant overall, but the opening,
Oh, I see, you're saying that's a recreational. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I think it
Usually-
always helps to have a.
Parks
closed
open,
date.
parks open and closed May,
Yeah.
Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to have a close meeting to drive stuff. If it starts to go off too much.
Richmond recreational season begins on May 15th.
so I'm a little confused about what actually needs to happen. Does there need to be a sign put up? I lost the thread.
Okay,
again.
so. As far as I'm concerned, we're hands off.
Okay,
Other than advising that things need to be mowed and the fences need to come down and all that stuff. And I don't mind doing a point from that. I had asked last year when we did our signs for the Dugway Road and all that, to have seasonal parking signs put up there, so people would know why there was a rope across there on November 6th. And why the rope was still there on May 14th. And, was shot down, I think mainly for financial reasons. And so I think that is a totally separate subject that I think we can move forward on, since we don't have anybody who's got a conflict there.
John, along with these dates, I know we talked about it once before, the Google Maps. Is it possible to, when you find it on Google Maps, is it possible to say seasonal parking? May 15th, or is that only done with a comment? In which case, maybe one of us should put a comment.
So, what is, that's a good point.
So when I
Sorry,
when I look it up on my phone, is there a way that we can put in somehow in the title that seasonal parking?
So in the maps that we have on the town meeting, on the town,
Are you actually bringing it up? Thanks. Must be a little bit more visual there.
so these I can put wherever I want. So I can put dates. But, so I can add the open and close dates to this map, and that map is linked to all the signs.
Mhm.
Problem is, I don't think, I don't know, do that on,
When I Google checkered house bridge parking, free parking lots, open now, closes at 8 p.m. Is there any way that can be modified?
yeah.
You see that?
So, I think I can. That's definitely not,
I just think that,
but
I think a lot of
that's
people,
dates.
especially who are biking, would be using
My daughter lives by that,
mapping program that.
and gets frustrated, there's something wrong.
So to take, I'll take it to see if I can suggest some edit for I know there's times, I don't know if there's seasons, but I think. I have to log in as me to do that.
So I'm just saying-
I'll take it,
okay.
I'll take it to do that.
So, Google Edit, check it out.
Well, I think dates and times would be on, many, right? That's sort of going back to the question.
Or should I pursue the physical sign issue with?
Yeah, I think so.
I want to
But,
understand the
does everybody
process
else
of how
feel
I get
that?
in front of the DRB on that, but
That was interesting.
I peeking on these.
Well,
Does everyone else feel?
Sunshine just walked by, you could ask
Who
them.
did? Oh, yeah. Does everyone else feel that Chuck should go through, should continue that? Seasonal sign posting?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is how long is that all going to take? And is it timely for the season? I think the first thing we find out is how long would it take to even get it in front of the DRB?
So I think we're looking at closure signs November 15th at this point.
Yeah,
And the thought was always to get two of them across from each other, and then when you roped it, you could go between the sign posts instead of through a guardrail, so that would stay over there or whatever, but. I threw out there too that we want a literate sign, but.
I also think, yeah, I think, since it's the 1111 permit and the leasing of that from the state, it might add some strength to that. You know, it's our obligation to our people that see stuff.
Yeah, or complicated more.
I'm gonna jump in out of order here to say that UMIAC is on the agenda tonight for Little Rock Park, item G. And I guess that means the select board is doing so well, they don't need our help with this, but continue.
Is that the ladder thing that they want?
And a parking space, yes.
And parking spaces.
Interesting. You know, that brings up a really good point, you know. are
Maybe
they-
they're not needed.
are they- If they're not coming to us. We should ask,
it's worth that.
we should ask, put that as part of the conversation with Josh.
That's my first question on the Cochrane corridor conversation. I know you can't about it, but. You know, are we doing it because we feel obliged, or are we doing it because somebody asked us to?
Conversation with Josh.
Okay, so, can we move on to QR codes for parking signage?
Please.
QR codes for parking signage. So we had talked about having stickers. That side, we were talking, Diane and I were talking about, make sure I remembered. So the idea would be something that we could easily add to the signs. That my understanding was that explained the ordinance, that explained the parking pattern. So it was like, how come it would do that? It wouldn't, I mean, there are many things we could point to. We could point to the parking map, like park somewhere else further, but this, so what I did is, I mean, just kind of did a simple thing. Actually, I think this just points to the ordinance. Can somebody scan that? Or actually, well,
Can
Yeah, I think the initial one was,
you,
you should be able to just take a picture of that. Try that.
you mean on
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Or should I just?
Just go take a picture. Yeah, you might want to stand up or zoom in, but you should be able to just take a picture of that. I think,
I've always said. I gotta get my shadow out of here.
Target.
Hello. I think it's one
Is this
second.
read on here?
Yeah, sure. I just thought that would be.
Okay, here we go.
I don't know if it's.
It's called tiny URL.
Well,
Oh, okay, so,
did it go to page 20 or did it go?
it goes to the top, it didn't go to page.
Okay,
20.
I can also maybe go to page 20, but I think we decided not to because.
Yeah, so can you explain the
Sure.
process, John?
So the, and I can change up the URL, et cetera, but what I wanted to do is. If you look on the website, I've got it up here, so here's the town website, ordinance and policies. You go down to. Traffic ordinances, is that right?
You
And
go
then if
down
you go down
to,
to page 20, I believe, no, I don't think it's traffic, is it? Jenny?
it is,
Traffic.
I have it, I printed it out.
Yeah, this is a lot to do with your phone.
Excuse me?
Yes, it's a little crazy.
Uh,
All the town traffic.
is it traffic? I think it is traffic.
It is traffic, it's down to, John, I printed this, and I can't seem to put my finger on it. Yeah,
Uh,
it is section 6A. Parking regulations, pulling roads,
Okay, part 20.
yes, no person shall park any vehicle. And you have to get on to number 20.
On entire west side uphill here, so it's right
Yeah.
here.
So this is 6A, paragraph 20.
Yeah, now,
Yes.
and so what I was proposing is that we'd make weatherproof vinyl signs with a URL. And I can hide the URL or something like that, and it would have textual up here, it says new parking pattern, see section 6A dash, comma 20, I don't know how,
So,
Counselor, if you can help me, figure out how to abbreviate that.
so we had conversations about this. My first thought was, well, that's so dumb. If I'm here from New Hampshire, do I really want to go through all Richmond's town ordinances to find the one? And I said,
Well, this one says which one, yeah, right,
that's great. And then I thought, well, maybe we should rewrite it, but then the more I looked at it, it says exactly what needs to be said. I couldn't think of, I mean, you could soften it by putting a few more words on, to ensure emergency vehicles have access to the whole road.
Well, to be clear, we do that on all the signs, beginning and entering the corridor. It's just this these two harbinger signs that show up before you get there that confuse people.
the ordinances have changed.
Right, because if that sign wasn't there, who cares? Because you would drive up into your town sign that said, oh, look at that, a new parking ordinance in effect, big red sign. So, I just wanna make sure we.
So I'm trying to think of what in addition is being asked, or, maybe nothing, but trying to think of.
You bring up a good point, if you're doing this, you likely have your phone, and unless you're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna save that, but later, are we doing this? Why are we doing this, what do we want to impart?
So someone from potentially out of town or in town, in addition to reading the signs, can use their phone and it directs them to a place in the traffic ordinance that has the legal verbiage. And for some people, that would be helpful, because the question that comes to mind, if the traffic ordinance gets changed, then someone might have to change this sign or.
Well, see, that was our trouble, John, because first John said, oh, I'll just put it on page 20, and I said, well, what about if things change, it's
Yeah.
no longer on page 20? Or it goes away, or whatever, and.
So would it,
So what are we trying to impart?
would it be more helpful if we're focused on QR codes to have a QR code that links you to the parking webpage on
I'm feeling the same way.
town, as opposed to
I'm feeling the same.
Yeah, so
verbiage that you get lost in?
what if we
I'm
had it,
liking that better.
what if we had it point to the parking page?
Yeah, would you mind bringing that back up again, John? I mean, in essence, if we made these QR codes, we could put them many places. That someone might.
No, and actually,
want
some of the signage still has that stuff, right? But you know what we could do, and I know we went back and forth on this thing, but we could, so here's a map, it sort of says where you can and can't park. Versus where you can't. There's the parking map, we could have, on this, I could have a pointer to the ordinance document. And then I could have a little, an extract. So if you could actually go to the ordinance language itself, I think Diane, you were demonstrating this, that if we. So in other words, I could have a general pointer on here that you can find if you were really interested. And, I think in this case, you know, if you go down to subpart,
That tells all of the ordinance on all
Yeah.
parking, so it's kind of interesting if somebody cared.
you could have a little blurb that says, A, no person shall park any vehicle, and then an ellipse, and dot, dot, dot. And then have part 20,
John, would you want to go back to your
map.
map again, please? What happens when you hit do we have the Dugway Road parking on there?
No, we haven't. No, yeah.
Because we put parking, you
We
don't
didn't
put.
wanna do that.
Look, here's what I have, is I have here's the no parking corridor, so I'm gonna click on that.
Oh, what does
No
that say
parking
there?
Start,
I don't have my
uphill
glasses.
start, no parking. Cochrane start. Oops, it's not right, no parking, East Cochrane, and, oh no, that's right, so this we'd have to go in further here, because
Read that?
this has no parking uphill start, oh, here it is, it's here. So these two things, that's the start and so that's the Dugway. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
That's really, yeah.
yeah.
So I had at one time on this map, you and I had, or then the cast of thousands had figured out what the legal parking places were here, and we decided we weren't gonna be in that business, but this does mark that there's no parking here.
Yeah,
Maybe I could make it a lot clearer, I could actually put, some sort of line here to say, or I could. You know what I mean, I could indicate this was the top bottom.
I kind of like what you have there now.
Mhm.
So maybe maybe not one, maybe nothing's needed, or two, maybe we just need to do the QR code that you already have that would show that.
And I could, what I was gonna say is I could put the parking ordinances down, just some verbiage here, a pointer to the parking ordinances. And then I could even have a little bullet that says Cochrane Road, and then, a little bit of extracted language. Cochrane Road, little extracted language, anything else, so that you don't have to dig, but the pointer, the link is there. That's really super easy to do. The catch is that things can get out of date, but
Yeah, that's the
I
catch.
do update this. Wonder if this, I'll make sure. Yeah, but
Dare I ask, is the word uphill all that clear?
So in the ordinance, it makes it a little bit clearer, when it says, on entire west side, in parentheses, uphill side opposite Huntington Riverside. So it does make it clear in the ordinance.
Right, so but on the map,
On the map, maybe we need to have more words.
rather than the word uphill, what about west side?
West side, how about west side?
well, I'm gonna say that somebody who didn't get through Tenderfoot may not actually know where west is. But
They don't know you go.
I like that. West side parentheses.
So we're.
Opposite Huntington Riverside or
You want to
non-Riverside.
change here,
Maybe non-Riverside, that's pretty,
don't say no, so we say.
so we say opposite Huntington Riverside.
Yeah,
Yeah, opposite.
I think that
Opposite
makes it
Riverside.
better than
So
uphill.
And I think, John, maybe where we headed was that rather than have the QR code signs point to the ordinance, it would point to this
stuff.
page on the town website.
And yes, and I would also put a parking ordinance section on here so that people don't have to dig. So this will point to the ordinance. And I can even pull out, a half a paragraph on, or is it only Dugway and Cochrane that have special ordinances?
No, there's There's 20 of them, John, for the no parking.
Well, I could just, actually, I
So
could
there's
pull,
Depot Street, Bar Road, I mean, Bridge Street.
so I could actually just pull out that language out of that big document.
I probably would put section 6A parking regulations on roads, because
And
if
put
somebody.
that in the document.
Well, if you're gonna use the QR code that's on other recreational parking areas, say there's one down at Overrocker.
Um, it might get a little messy, but you know what I can do is do people know like little twiddly that like you can open it up or close it or?
I don't know, Twiddly.
So I could just put the parking ordinances here and put 6A.
Well, would you, if you linked it, you could link it to the
I
parking.
could, yeah, I think the question is that, do we want, and that's fine with me also. But, my question is, you know, to hand them whatever it is.
I guess I would, maybe you'd want to be clear that it was a summary and not the entire ordinance.
Yeah, I think we wanna be a little careful about restating any of it, because it changed, but. So this is,
Or there's an option, you just don't take the sentence further and let it be.
I like giving them, and I like putting it, one thing I'd say is about pointing it to the parking page, is that parking page brings up the map. And says the places here, oh shoot, you know, there's no place to park, we're gonna go, and that's actually navigates pretty well on a phone.
I very much like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of the signage already has that.
So are we talking about making that QR code that we've already done in a vinyl? So that it's maybe we're able to put it other places that,
Does that sound right? I can get them out of weatherproof vinyl?
This is the home project, you get a bunch of stakes and.
Well,
No,
but
no,
they're
I
not
was thinking put them on the sign,
Which
Oh,
is,
neatly on the sign.
which is a beat conversation,
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's legal.
and
I mean,
if you wanna do that, that's fine, but I'm not really seeing a great need for that.
I'm not even.
I'm not.
All right. I'm happy to not do.
But I do think. A QR code with parking options on it makes perfect sense.
Well, that's what
We have
we
that.
have, that's what this is.
Well, I don't want, yeah, no, if you're linking, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question. I don't want to link to the ordinance,
But link to this page, and I
I'll
can,
link to
what,
that's, and maybe I misunderstood your point, but that would be well worth the effort.
I,
And put a couple words on there, so, you know, parking options or whatever, and hit it.
that's, yeah, that's it.
So Chuck, you're suggesting a link to the page and not the ordinance.
And but I think as John and I were just talking about, I will put on this for those who want to dig deeper, here's the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm putting that on the meeting's agenda already. We'll follow up.
I'll have it prototype, but
so this already exists. You already have the QR code. It already points to this page.
right, and on that page is it, what I was thinking, when you think about. This page, I would just put, after the parking map, I would put. Parking ordinances and just a link to it.
Like a hyperlink, that kind of thing. I have no problem with that. Then the question is, are we feeling that we want to create QR codes that we would stick on things?
I think that's a deep question, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think we can't stick them, well, we have to ask people, I can imagine we're not allowed to stick them on signs. But, assessment, yeah.
You don't want to become
Okay.
taggers.
Yeah.
But I have all the.
Okay, no, I appreciate that.
Make a lot of details. All right, so we are at 7:15, so we're 5 minutes ahead. And we are into the topics of Dugway Road, Cochrane Road Corridor and East Cochrane Road. So do we wanna, what do we wanna do with those?
I have a thought. It'd be nice to have our meeting with, unless there's something that burning that we need to address in these three items. Be nice to have our meeting with Josh before we discuss Dugway and East Crockland further. That's my thought.
I don't mind taking a walk for the Dugway conversation. That needs to be here because he's doing the minutes.
Well, that's right. Just mean I go to jail or something like that.
Actually, in the ethics thing, there was one clause that if you were an official who no one else could do her or his job, you were required to soldier on and do the job, just make it part of the record that you could not refuse the job.
Good memory on that.
I didn't, yeah, good memory. That was,
Yeah.
I didn't apply it to this,
Yeah,
but I think.
but that would be the application for it.
So,
And on the other hand, the de minimis is,
the question
I
would
couldn't
be,
care less. So,
the question would be, do you three feel there is discussion to be had about Dugway Road tonight?
I didn't have anything in particular.
If you do, John, that's fine. I'll leave it back in minute there.
Okay.
I think that this decal thing is the only thing that came up on the parking signs. And
yeah, I would say that one thing we can do, so. If there's nothing super pressing, I think I would feel better if it was after the conversation. But we can take short term, things like short term that are things we want to put in place before the opening of the season. I think those are things that we could all discuss without any difference of opinion. And then anything that's big and not,
But I don't think that's the standard.
yeah, I think we need-
The standard,
Good point, a good point. So the standard is anything, right?
yeah, the standard is anything.
Okay.
Like previously. 100% on board what you said, then I'll vote and then we can chat,
Well,
but now the news thing says, no, you can't chat.
yeah. You understand?
yeah, I think great. I agree. And I think anything else is a slippery slope.
I have informational pieces that are brief on East Cochran Road. Based on two conversations I had with two people in town, but if it would require you both to recuse yourself for me to explain that, perhaps it'd be simpler to wait until we resolve the issue.
I mean, it's only 3 weeks till we come back.
And,
Just on that though. You only have to recuse yourself from the decision.
voting.
So if it's informational,
Well, whether you have to
Before you-
walk to the
before
other
you-
side of the room.
Well, but
Yeah,
and,
we'll do whatever makes people comfortable.
well, this is, can we just talk about this, because this might help us when we talk to Josh. So, so let's just take this one example. So John has this information about East Concord Road. And is it his job to tell us to recuse ourselves, or is it our job to recuse ourselves?
Oh, it's your job.
Right.
If John has a problem with you, he needs to go to the higher authority.
If, so does, but 2 steps before that, so if John. I'm sorry, I'm just using this as again, but it came up, and these are the nitty gritties that I need to know from Josh. So say you go like, hey, I've got this info from
Jim
Jim
finds it.
Feinstein. And I want to share the group. And would we at that point, like when would we? I don't think I think we didn't recuse when we were making a decision. I think
I did this off a little bit.
Yeah.
My understanding is. You can hear whatever John has to say,
Well, because we could join,
but you don't join in the discussion if you feel like you're compromised.
okay,
So John can tell us his informational stuff and you're all there. Chit chat, if you guys want your chit chat or you sit back. But you can hear what he has to say, it's not, you're not being penalized.
are you with the nature of it, are you comfortable with it?
Yes,
So are we kind of officially then going on to East Cochran?
Do we have anything, the same, just having had that conversation, is there anything like that, well, we just sort of did.
We just talked about-
With the York.
Yes, and then I think we moved off of it, and so there's two things listed, in some, the Cochrane Road corridor study and preparations. And
So,
Do you wanna share, or you wanna wait?
I will share, then if you can decide if there's a conflict of interest, and then we can see what we did. If you thought there was one.
let's try it out.
let's try it out.
Let's
So
try
I
it out.
spoke with Keith, the town planner. I spoke with him maybe back in February. Or January, I forget the exact dates, and I shared that conversation. And then I had a second follow-up conversation with him. Which was actually before our meeting last, and I was unable to share it at that time. And so he had initially said earlier in the winter that he disagreed with Tyler, the zoning administrator's opinion about the use of fill next to the meadow on East Cochrane Road. And that was of great interest to me. Then I had a second conversation with him some weeks later, in which he said he still disagreed with him, but ultimately the decision came down to Tyler, which presented the idea that proceeding with the fill as long as Tyler was the zoning administrator would potentially be more complicated. That's what I wanted to
Okay, so that's good, because that was the one piece that we all thought made this corridor study hooey, was the fact that they were proposing to do things that Tyler told us could not be done. So the fact that you clarified some of that, I think, is important. But it doesn't sound like it's a done deal. It sounds like Tyler was still have the ability to go back and change that.
Tyler did not think fill could be used
Right.
for, I won't go on too long. That if the purpose of the fill was to facilitate pedestrian traffic, was okay. If it was a dual purpose for parking and pedestrian traffic, he could decide which one was primary. He'll decide that it's parking and say it can't be done. He disagreed with that opinion, but acknowledged that Tyler is the one that gets to make that up. So that's all I had to share on that. It seemed more complicated than it did
Oh, good.
with my first conversation.
It's great.
And I think, yeah, because Tyler initially pointed to 5 tenants that parking had to be addressed to before it could be approved for fill or whatever. It was business, it was school, it was snowplow turnaround, whatever it was, and there was no tenant in there for recreational parking.
And so there are ways it conceivably could proceed, including changes to zoning and Tyler getting another job, but it's more complicated. I could stop there.
No, I think you did great work.
Okay, then the other thing is that Jim, I ran into him from the land trust finds, and he said that he was gonna send me written or us written material, which he hasn't done. But the last conversation was that they were going to focus on the Beacon Preserve this summer and not planning on doing anything in the meadow.
Is there anything in the Beacon Preserve that you think will affect us that we should be part of?
I hadn't thought of that.
Well, that's me.
What can you say? Is there,
I'm just,
Yeah,
so my concern is that what I know the Beacon Preserve is, it's by no means a parking area. It's kind of a field and muddy and all that. If they're focusing on that, does that mean that they are relocating gravel, or are they doing something to make that more stable?
why don't I follow up with Jim and ask him to send written material?
I don't need any more work for you, but that would be
Okay.
my thought was make sure we're not missing something that we should be involved in.
So he was, we're looking at that to be seasonal also,
Correct.
not,
I know
whereas,
it's holiday.
correct, whereas, but the old one that is now closed off
Yeah.
was plowed.
And I'm kind of curious where that, little mounds of dirt came from. That are in the little parking area,
no, that's interesting.
because that seems to fly on the face of what we've been taught regarding adding fill to a floodplain.
Yeah, I don't,
Well, there's that giant
or maybe at that level, it's not.
30 yards away.
Yeah,
What is it? That's not even a floodplain, that's. Is that the flood hazard or the flood
The
zone?
lower part
No,
is certainly floodplain,
No, I mean,
Lower
I think
part.
it's worse than floodplain, it does flood,
right, and we're told
But
by
where the
Tyler,
dirt is blocking people from going
understand, oh,
is,
and Tyler told us, we can't move material into the floodplain for widening the berm up there by the Winusi River Bridge, which we thought was a good idea, but he said, oh.
that was a flood overlay
yeah,
issue
yeah.
from Tyler.
Right, but is that any different? That point is at a higher elevation than
Yeah,
anything down there at Beacon. And if we weren't allowed to put it there, then certainly Beacon would be as more of a floodplain.
I don't know if the top of that driveway is in flood overlay as,
I'll bet it's in the 500 year.
yeah, I don't know, but it's interesting because there is a flood person who often looks at what we're all doing.
An interesting question, and I think it's far enough down Rockland Road when we pass this, is. Since we noticed that, is it our responsibility to,
No, well, you are welcome as a citizen to do what
Yeah.
you want to do.
maybe,
And as Tyler would tell you, he doesn't follow up on anything unless somebody brings it up.
that's interesting. So maybe, we'll ask.
So are we at adjournment?
Well, I think those are the things that we have, so we got to the end, and this is normally where we talk about topics for next meeting, we've been talking about them all along, is there anything that we will want?
I've been kind of keeping notes, and again, I was trying to honor initially you kind of said you're gonna split early
Yeah.
because you didn't want to hang out for a meeting you couldn't
It's a good
speak.
test.
It's a bad sign that you can't even strip his coat out. It means it's without something happens.
Okay,
John, how you doing?
Good.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were pensive or quiet, and I want to make sure that you've got a good place to voice everything. And this is-
Deep thoughts.
I will just say that,
I like his
I
default.
appreciate everybody thinking this through, this is all important stuff,
I
and all the work that you've done.
value our discussions.
Yeah. All right, if hearing no other topics, I would say we move to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Well, I can't make a motion. Do we have a first?
I move we adjourn.
A second.
Say, oh,
Okay, it is
7:30.
7:27 on April 7th, and we'll